So a couple months ago, I actually had the chance to shoot an elopement in Yosemite on film. Yosemite itself is a very bucket list location, I feel like, for any photographers. The landscape is beautiful. Even the architecture around the national park is beautiful. There's a reason it's one of the most visited national parks in the world. So getting the opportunity to shoot a wedding there is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. I luckily had the chance to do hybrid coverage, so I did digital and film. I'm going to focus more specifically on the film that I took. The camera I used, the type of film I used, my thought process behind the shots that I took, different composition techniques, and also how I metered for my lighting. And before I get further into the video, I actually had a chance to publish an article with my friends over at Moment. I'll definitely link it below if you want to go read it. It goes a little bit more in depth with the tips that I used while I was shooting there in terms of covering an elopement solo, as well as just shooting in different lighting conditions with a film camera. So if you want to check that out, I'm going to put the link below. You can go ahead and click on that. But to start off, we'll start with the camera itself. I use my Pentax 645. It's going to be a medium format film camera. Since this was a professional shoot, I did want to get a little bit more clarity and quality out of the film. I would have shot 35, but I felt that medium format was going to give me a little bit better quality in terms of my final images. And then if I wanted to post-process anything or upload anything in a Lightroom, I kind of would have had a little bit more dynamic range to work with. So Pentax 645, 45 millimeter on there. Kind of kept it wide. One of the reasons I actually kept it wide was because of the landscape of Yosemite. It is a national park and it's beautiful. There's a lot of soaring cliffs. So I really wanted to be able to capture everything, whether I was close up with them or zoomed out with them. Keeping in mind as well too, I had digital coverage with the 50 millimeter on it. So that was for a little bit more of my zoom up portrait shots. But this was more for my wide shots, the ones that felt a little bit bigger. It did a really good job in terms of capturing how big Yosemite felt, but especially just the elegance of having a wedding in a national park. I personally would recommend going wide with a film camera if you're going to do something like that, unless you're going to focus more on portraits. But if you're shooting an elopement and it's an outdoor elopement, I would absolutely say go a little bit wider so you can capture more of that scenery. Say they're eloping outside because they love that outdoor nature feel, and you really want to capture that in your images. So that'll bring me to my second point, was what film did I use? And for this specifically, I only went with Kodak Gold 200. I know Porsche's popular, the 400 and the 800. Personally, I went with the Gold 200 for two specific reasons. One was for the lighting situation we were going to have while we were shooting there. So it was an early morning elopement. We got up at 6 a.m. and got into the national park by about 8 o'clock. So my light was going to be early morning sunlight. So I wanted to keep my ISO on my film camera lower. That's why we went with 200. Another thing being, the location we were shooting in was actually Cathedral Beach. Cathedral Beach is nestled right in the middle of the valleys, which means that at a certain point when the sun was going to start rising, it was going to come over the cliffs and give me a lot of harsh sunlight directly onto the beach. There's not a lot of shading in Cathedral Beach, and it really depends where you set up your subjects. So for me, I set them up with the sunlight that was going to hit them directly. I avoided backlight at all costs with these shots, just because with film photography, you could lose a lot of detail on something that's not very well lit. So I wanted to at least be able to have the detail, and if I needed to salvage it from overexposing, I could go ahead and bring that down. On the contrary, if you backlight somebody and they're too dark in the front, it's gonna look really, really bad to try to bring up the details in them, especially in post, especially on film. I also just really enjoy the color profile on Gold 200. I feel like it gives your skin tones a real nice warmth to them. And with this elopement photography and this wedding photography, I wanted it to feel a little bit like golden hour without being too harsh on the yellows. And if need be, I could have always brought back my saturation on my images as well too. I also wanted to touch a little bit on composition as well in this video. So being outside, there's obviously a lot that you could do. I think it could become really overwhelming if you're not prepared, or if you don't already go in with a list of stuff that you know you want to get. I kind of researched in advance what the location was going to look like, specifically where they were going to be eloping. At the time of day that we were going to be there, I needed to set them up in a way that wasn't going to have them fully front lit, but a little bit side lit as well too, so I could get some really nice sun shots. So we actually did set up on one of the far end of the beaches, which is really nice because toward the beginning of their ceremony, there was actually no sunlight coming over that cliff. About 5 or 10 minutes in, it did start to break over that cliff, so it started to light them. We're facing each other, meaning the sunlight was hitting them from an angle. It looked really, really pretty for the pictures. Before and during the ceremony went off really, really well without a hitch. And after we got into the intimates, and the intimates is where it kind of became tricky, because now we were looking at a situation where the sunlight was going to be directly overhead, and you really had to be careful with the lighting and how I was going to meter for that lighting. It was going to be really easy to blow out these shots because there was so much overhead light coming in. If you've ever been to Yosemite, when the light hits the top of the valley, it kind of just illuminates everything. There's a lot of big granite rock walls, and that can kind of bounce light off of it and just shine straight down onto the valley floor, which could be an issue if you're not experienced with what you're doing. So we took advantage of some shaded areas, and we also took advantage of some filled areas. I personally metered actually for the sky, so I would take 2 shots of everything. I metered for the sky, and then I'd meter 1 for my subjects, just to have that range and that double coverage on it. The reason I metered for the sky for 1 shot was going to be because I didn't want that sky blown out all in white. I felt like that would have been detrimental to most of my images. And then second reason that I metered for my subject, and I more so metered for their skin, and if I needed to pull back anything on that, I could go ahead and play with my white balances, the highlights on it. I could lift shadows a little bit to make the image a little bit more even and not feel so harsh in terms of the contrast from light to dark. Overall, though, I think the images came out very, very beautifully. I mean, obviously Yosemite's beautiful no matter what. You could shoot the landscape by itself, you could shoot portraits there, you could take video there. Having the opportunity to shoot an elopement was once in a lifetime for me. I would love, love, love to go back. I can't wait until I get another opportunity to do so as well. I hope this video helps you if you're looking to shoot film in Yosemite of just certain subjects or portraits of your friends, or if you're a photographer looking to shoot an actual event there, meaning like an elopement or a wedding or something of that sort. This video was just to give you a little bit of insight on what my thought process was, how the images turned out, and how it could benefit you going forward for your shoots there. Once again, if you guys want to check out that article, it's going to be down below for you. There's going to be my Instagram down there as well too. But that's all for right now, so I'm hoping to do another video on the digital images I did as well too at some point in the future, where I can kind of touch base on my digital camera, show you some of those images as well too. Until then, yeah, that's going to be it. Cool.